Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Sherica Hymes, and I am the host and founder of the Total Woman Summit. Thank you so much for joining us today as we are on day 10 of our free virtual workshop series. It was 11 days, 26 speakers, and 22 sessions. We've got the experts and the topics that you want to discuss. We're discussing COVID-19, aka life interrupted, and everything connected to it. Today, we're talking the politics of the pandemic with our good friend TaJuan Stout-Mitchell, who is a political correspondent and a political advisor, a community advocate, a retired politician, and all things Black woman magic. She is amazing, and I have the pleasure of calling her my mentor and my friend and my sister. So I am super, super excited to share her with you all today and all of her wisdom of nuggets. So without further ado, hi, Ms. TaJuan, how are you?
Hey, doing great. I don't know what to say after all of that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You look beautiful today, Ms. TaJuan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So before we get started, I want to do a couple of housekeeping things and give them some rules. So number one, would you guys be so kind to drop us something in chat and let us know if you can see and hear me and Ms. TaJuan, okay?
I love your fro.
Oh, thank you. You can tell that I've been practicing physical distancing. This is the result of that. And
I have too. It's called a wig.
I have one too, but listen, I had to take mine off. I was like, I can't.
I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We make do.
You are, Mr. TaJuan always look gorgeous. She is my goals in life. Y'all just follow me. We'll see how I go. We'll see if I get there one day. But so they said they can see and they can hear us. We're so excited. So here's how it'll go. First of all, for those of you that are new to the Total Woman Summit experience, the summit was created to empower women through education, connection, and community. And in keeping with our commitment with education and community, we are talking about the politics of the pandemic. There's no way around it. It has impacted all of our lives, from the stay-at-home or safer-at-home orders to the businesses that have been shut down, maybe even your job impacted. There's no way around it. And then we've also been talking about all the other areas of our lives that COVID has interrupted, because it's been an interruption. It's been a disruption. So we definitely want to have meaningful discussions about that. So we have a couple of rules 1 through 50. We're going to have fun. That's it. We're going to have fun. It's Friday. We have women, Ms. TaJuan, from all over the world. Women have been joining us from France and Canada and Italy and Amsterdam. We've had women joining us from all over the world. So, and I know right now we have women on from Washington, from Canada, from California, just everywhere. So, and we have a few fellas that have slipped in too. So welcome, fellas. And then rules 51 through 100. This is a conversation. I created this session so you all could talk to us while Ms. TaJuan is talking to us. So ask the questions that you want to know. We're going to answer them real time. If we say something, you need us to unpack that a little bit more, or if you need a little bit more clarification, listen, you have two ways that you can ask. You can ask in the Q&A function. You can do that boldly with your name, or you can do it anonymously, or you can put it in chat. Either way, doesn't matter to us. So be sure to do that. And then make sure you're following the chat, because my good friend Shamel is graciously helping us out today. She's capturing all of the notes and nuggets that Ms. TaJuan is going to share. So all you need to do is be prepared to snap. Just screenshot. Go back and check it out later. All right. So let's get into it, Ms. TaJuan. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your political experience.
Oh, I'll start from the very beginning. And well, not the very beginning, but I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. When I was 16 or 17 years old and at Southside High School, I wrote in my yearbook that year that I wanted to be a civil rights activist. And one day I wanted to be the executive director of NAACP. Well, that never happened. Even though I tried twice, that never happened. But God told me one day that it does not have to limit my voice. And if I have a heart for this, find another way to use my voice for people. And so I did by engaging in activities around the social work area. I worked for the Tennessee Department of Human Services. I worked for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I became a PTA mom. I became an advocate for the schools. And then later I decided it was time for me to run for school board. After several incidents in schools where my children attended, I decided that we needed more parents on the board with real experiences with education. And I drove that message throughout this community. And I won that election with 3 or 4 men in the race. Yeah. Everybody kept telling me it would be a runoff with that many people in the race. But I think people were ready for something different. And when God speaks to you and tells you to move in an area, you just move with faith that he's going to give you everything you need. Because I did not have money. I had a little name recognition because I worked in this district. And that is so important. And then from there, after serving there for 9 years and being the president 1 year, and it was the year that we got more money in for education from the city of Memphis than we ever had in history. I shall never forget it. It was the year that the resolution we required uniforms. Now, our kids did not like me because of that one, but we felt like it was necessary because we were losing children to tennis sneakers and clothes that they had on trying to go home from school. And then it was the year that we introduced school choice. So if there is space available for your child at a school that's close to you at work, why not make parenting easier? So yeah, and so that was the year we introduced school choice through my term. And then from there, I decided that I needed to be on the city council because I wanted to make education a priority. I wanted to make education a priority. Education in neighborhoods. I could see the decline in my neighborhood, and I didn't like what I was seeing. And so I ran for city council, and I became the first woman to be elected on the city council from this area. But, I skipped a part. Even before I ever ran for office, I worked in city government for Mayor Dick Hackett. I have really worked for 4 mayors. I worked for Mayor Dick Hackett, Mayor W.W. Harrington, Mayor A.C. Warden, and Mayor Marvin Laurie. Wow. So, yeah. So it gave me an opportunity to see the administrative side, and then running for office gave me an opportunity to see the policy making and community advocacy side.
Wow.
That's my story.
That's her story, and she is so modest and humble, right? Like, who's forgetting that they work for 4 mayors? This is why I love Miss TaJuan, because she is so modest and so humble. But we're going to unpack all of that today, so I'm not going to let her lean into that humility because we need this knowledge today. And so one of the things that Miss TaJuan did not mention was that she has been very active in helping the next generation of female leaders get into office. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now as an active role as a political correspondent and a mentor to those up and coming politicians?
Oh, I saw that as a part of this duty. If I have gained some knowledge and experience from the jobs and opportunities I've been blessed with, it was imperative that I share that and inspire and encourage the next level of leadership. See, often in Memphis, I noticed right away, we have a leadership gap. And we have a leadership gap because senior people have failed to undergird a new generation. And when this journey for justice, equality, and freedom is not a sprint. It is the marathon, but the marathon requires a relay leg. So I do so much, share what I have done with the next person and share what I have seen with the next so they can carry the baton the next leg. And hopefully they will do the same for others. I've tried to help Harold Collins, gifted young man who I think is a terrific leader. You can always count on him to do exactly what he says he's going to do. Katrina Robinson, at a time when no one would touch her because she was running against an incumbent. But we needed change, and you have to be honest with yourself. I said, don't fall out with people. I may not support somebody, but I'm still friendly to them. But I just thought we needed change, and she is proven to be a great leader. Ramesh Agbear was, well, I will say, Representative Barbara Cooper tapped Ramesh Agbear, and I later saw what she saw in her and decided to join forces and give her support. There are too many for me to name. Wanda Halbert. I just think Wanda is doing a yeoman's job in a male-dominated world as the clerk, and I don't think she's through yet. I think you will see great things from her in the future. Lee Harris, when I heard he wanted to run, everybody kept telling me how he couldn't win, and I kept saying, well, he won't win if we don't try. Now that's for sure. And he won't win if we don't support him. He won't win if he won't run. So when he decided to run, I was there, and I have not been disappointed. That does not mean you have to agree with every decision somebody makes. But as long as the majority of the decisions I'm comfortable with, they will keep my support.
That is so good. Thank you. I thought it was important that Ms. TaJuan share with us her experience, because I wanted to establish very early on in this conversation her credibility and her experience and expertise currency, because those things matter. So now we're getting ready to go take a deep dive. Put on your get ready. Put on your life jacket. We're about to get into it. So, Ms. TaJuan, the way I chose to describe your topic was that some states are reopening. People are protesting for and against the virus. And it's still running rampant, and the world is reopening. And who's responsible for making these decisions, and what power do they have? And it occurred to me as I was watching all of the feed, the news threads, the fake news, the real news, wherever you stand on that issue, just all of the commentary around it, it occurred to me that there are so many people that may have forgotten the basic civics lessons that we learned while we were in school. So first things first, can you explain to us the different levels of government and what they're responsible for?
I will do my best. Okay, let's start off with your city hall. Okay. Your city hall is responsible for the operations of the city. Your services for sanitation, your public works services, your bus transportation services, fire and police, your libraries, your community centers. They are generally primarily responsible for making sure that everything functions so you can meet your daily needs by going to work, maintaining your livelihood and your family in a sense of community. Usually the city mayor can shut down a city until the governor speaks. You got it? Until the governor speaks. Because the city is connected to the state of Tennessee and is a part of its state. And the state, once the governor speaks and decides, well, I've decided we're going to open back up, the city mayor's hands could be tied. However, that is why it is so important, and I will give Mayor Strickland due credit. He has maintained good relationships with Republicans and Democrats alike. So when he advocates for our city and shows the science behind why he wants to delay our opening or gradually reintroduce us back into a full society, the governor listened. And he made exclusions for Memphis, Nashville, and I think Chattanooga. It might have been Chattanooga. But he made 3 exclusions for 3 cities and allowed those mayors to make decisions for those jurisdictions. That's why you never make enemies. You may disagree with a policy, but you never attack people. You attack the policies.
Attack the policies, never attack the people.
That's
and
right.
make sure that you have relationships on both sides, which we are going to get into the integrity of the politics, and that's possible a little bit later. But I want to make something very clear before you finish explaining to us the different levels of government, is that while it's true Ms. TaJuan is in Memphis, however, these things are the same across the board in the United States of America. The responsibilities and the power of your city mayors is not specific, it's not state specific, right, Mr. Juan?
That's true, that's true. Those are general things that mayors do. Now, usually, we are the United States of America. We are a federation. That means we have, let's just say, if it was a big incorporation and we had a lot of little sub companies up underneath, like FedEx has the trucking industry, the office supply industry. All right, they are part of FedEx, but they have little separate corporations. Well, our states show some autonomy. We have some autonomy, but we are part of the United States. And that's why when the president of the United States said, we're going to open up you heard a giant holler from the elephants in the room governors who said, not so fast, because the state has the power to decide when we're going to open up. Now, the president could do things like give you incentives to help pay for your overtime fee for your fire and police if you would open up by so and so, so and so, so and so. That's federal money. If you want that federal money, you may try to figure out a way to do this. And those are discussions that could have been, they could have had behind the scenes. I don't know, but the state does not, the federal government, unless it's a constitutional issue, the federal government does not dictate to states when to open.
Okay, got it. So here we are. So far, we've talked about the responsibilities of City Hall, and that they're taking care of your daily needs in your city, your services in your city, and then the responsibility of the mayor. And that the mayor is subject to what the state governor says that they want to do. Where do our
and the state governments have responsibility to fund education, to fund your prison system, to fund your healthcare system. That's why we place a lot of pressure on states to accept Obamacare, because the states determine how to be involved in those issues and to what level. And the federal government feeds all of these programs.
So where do the senators fall into this? Why are senators so important?
Well, they should have the big picture. They should have the big picture, and they have resources to help fund state and local governments for initiatives in that area. Your roads, you have federal funds to help states with your transportation issues. So they help fund the big picture. Even though states govern, the state is the parent of education, the federal government offers seed money to start new initiatives or to support programs that the state has put in place, or to encourage the state to look at new programs.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so how does this policy get developed? What is all of this? We hear a lot about policy and why you got to be voting for someone that, that aligns with your policies. For instance, how do we get to a place, because we're getting to the COVID, but I want to establish this foundation so we're all on the same page. How do we get to the place where people are sitting around the table making a decision about if someone can have an abortion or not, or if taxes, how does that happen? How does that, what are these bills? How does that work?
I heard someone today on CNN say that their policy is driven by a four-legged stool. And the four legs are politics. And unfortunately, politics becomes personal about how does this protect me in continuing to serve a constituency. Politics, science. That's how you get Clean Water Acts, and that's how you get how much, what restaurants rules and regulations for restaurants and how they serve and feed people. So science governs it. Also economics. What will make us money and what will help our community to thrive and make money. So sometimes policy decisions are made based on economics. And the fourth thing, policy is usually driven by, the fourth leg is public outcry. If there is enough of an outcry, for instance, let me give you an example. The young man who was jogging in his neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am. Ahmaud.
Yes. And as long as everything was quiet, it stayed the same. But when the public outcry came after seeing the video and knowing the facts based on that, what we just see on the video, we don't know all the facts yet, but after we see that, then there came action. Why? Because it impacted politics. And it could impact economics. Got it?
Are y'all getting it? Raise your hand, use your tool at the bottom. Are y'all getting it? Is it making sense? Is this helpful? Yep. They're raising their hands. This is why I wanted to do it. This is why, because I wanted to establish this first. Okay, got it. Okay, the four-legged stool, and Shamel has put those notes in there now, and then we'll sort of wrap this up with what is Congress responsible for?
Congress is responsible for your federal laws, all your federal laws, and it is also responsible for your purse strings, the federal money. It sets the budget. It determines where the money is going to be spent. It is also responsible for oversight of the president and oversight of federal laws. Now, this is the first time in my lifetime, and I'm 67 years old, that I have seen Congress neutered. And by that, I mean, it seems that because of the personality that we have in the presidency, he has unfortunately encouraged many of the Republicans on the Senate and in the Congress not to challenge him, even when they know this is obvious. And that's sad because it's bigger than him. It's bigger than, and it will hold, if they could hold him accountable without, they don't have to overthrow his leadership to hold him accountable. But if they could hold him accountable without overthrowing the leadership, it would be better for the United States of America. But I have not seen that this year.
Wow. So, Ms. TaJuan, so we've gone all the way up now to from your local from your fire, police protection, all the way up now to the presidency. Can you explain to me or to us why it's important in the connection between me voting in my local elections and who's making decisions in Congress and what they're supporting?
Well, you always want to vote for people who have like mindsets. If you have a belief system, I have a strong belief system, things I truly know I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in everybody being treated fairly. I believe in workers' rights. I believe in a woman's right to choose. I believe in public education and the sanctity of public education. And if you take money from public education for vouchers or other things, well, then you leave them a void. I believe you should try to find other revenue for those other things if that's what you want. I don't have a problem with other things, but don't take it from public education. Find a new revenue stream. Because I know, just like you know, if when I have 4 children, and when they were all in the house, if one was in college, that didn't stop. My rent didn't go down. My utilities didn't go down because one was in college. In fact, I had more to take care of. But, and that's the way I feel about public education. So vote for what you believe in. And then I believe in workers' rights. I won't forget that the first week after the pandemic, and I woke up and heard the sanitation workers in the front of my house. I looked out of the window and I noticed they didn't have PPE. They didn't have personal protective equipment. And I thought, okay, that they are taking my refuge. Things that I wouldn't let in my house because I was scared. The bags and sacks from the grocery store and the boxes. Mm-hmm. But they had no mask. So I want to feel like I elected people who would be sensitive to that and make sure that the budget allowed for them to have personal protective equipment. So I called my councilwoman and I wrote a post on Facebook. I'm still active. Even though I'm retired, I'm tired, but I'm still active. I wrote a letter to on Facebook about it. It was shared over 60 times. And before I knew it, I got a call from a very dear friend of mine, one of my goddaughters at City Hall, and she said, this will be taken care of. So you have to make sure you're voting for people who have similar values. If we had voted for the wrong person who just didn't care and wanted the job done, and I told them to get their own PPE, they may not be able to afford that in their budget. But just as a firefighter has to have a helmet when he goes into a fire, I expect for you to give the sanitation workers or any public worker who needs a mask a part of their equipment for work. Absolutely. In a pandemic. And so they did that, and I was glad. But that's why it's important. You want to elect people who have a similar like-mindedness.
That's good. That's so good. So, and I wanted to make that connection for those of you that who you're voting for locally. It matters. It matters because they ultimately, then those people push policies and those people hold people accountable at every level, and it goes all the way upstream. And when you sit at home and you don't vote because you're like, your vote doesn't matter, this is how your vote, not voting is your vote for whoever you don't support. And so just know that not voting, you having a tantrum about not voting because your favorite candidate isn't in there. This is how we get to a neutered Congress not holding a president accountable. And this is not person specific. We're talking in general. This is how this all works. Okay, so let's talk about the politics of this pandemic, Ms. TaJuan. And you just explained to us why people there's some incentives why folks may be opening, why some folks aren't opening. Tell us a little bit about why there's so many different views, why there may be, because she's not speaking for everyone, why there are so many different views and people on one side of the fence on doing what's right for people. Wait a minute, let me start that question all the way over, Mr. Warren, because it's like 3 different questions in that. Let me start over. What I really want to ask is, how do we get to we're not making decisions about saving lives? How does that happen in politics?
I am going to say this.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love my country, I recognize its flaws. And the travesty and cruelty of racism, classism, sexism still there are still some remnants of that. And unfortunately, when the word got out through science that most of the people suffering are our essential workers, brown and Black people, or our elderly, which is another class of people that I truly believe get the short end of the stick. When that word got out, some felt that they were expendable. And the very people we're sending back to work are some of those people in restaurants, bars, clubs, casinos, that will be hurt again.
So again, I want to keep connecting these dots to voting and how we get to these decisions, because they are not absent of another.
You're right. And you know, and I'm going to say this, Sherica, I wouldn't be so troubled about them going back to work if I felt we had a government who fully endorsed and supported the CDC's recommendations for going back to work, the CDC science. Here we have one of the best World Health organizations in the world. I believe the World Health Organization itself listens to our CDC. But when you can't get basic rules about how to re-enter the workplace and reopen the workplace, you can't get that document out because of politics. That's a sad commentary.
Where is that coming from? Is it coming from, back to your earlier point about people being neutered or sort of being paralyzed?
Yes. And my 92-year-old mother once said to me, and I shall never forget it, TaJuan, we don't have a poverty problem. And I said, what you mean, Mom? Yes, we do have a poverty problem. You see all this poverty in Memphis and all over this country? She said, no, we have a greed problem.
Oh.
And the greed is about power.
Greed is about power. Wisdom from someone who has lived 9 decades and still kicking. She's still kicking. Mr. Juan, you mentioned something earlier, and don't forget, you guys, you can drop your questions in Q&A. We're answering them real time. I want to ask this question. So many times you hear that in order to be in politics, you've got to sell your soul and you've got to compromise. However, I know you personally, and I know integrity is something that is extremely important to you. Can you speak to us about how you can actually have a career in politics and still maintain your integrity?
I don't think it's that hard. To be a politician, you really need to know yourself and know what you believe. Mm. And I do believe you have to compromise sometimes. You have to know where you want to go and how, and there are other people. See, people always get mad when one of my dearest friends is a Republican by the name of Brent Taylor. And Brent is way on the other side of the Republican spectrum. I'm way over here on the left. He's way on the right. But we still found ways to support each other on things that we thought were important. Well, I can live with this, but I can't live with that. I can live with this, but I can't live with that. Mm-hmm. And we didn't hold it against each other when we voted differently. I still know he's a kind human being who loves his wife and kids just like I love my husband and my family. And we both want a great Memphis, Tennessee for our children to grow up in. Mm-hmm. But I think you find ways to compromise, number one. Mm-hmm. And then I think you know your beliefs, number two. Well, number one is know what you believe and stand for what you believe. Number two, figure out what will move the needle and then compromise based on moving the needle. Sometimes you move the needle just a little bit to get where you want to go. And the next time you move it a little further. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I do believe in compromise because you are one on the body of a city council. You are one of 13. All of us come from different backgrounds, different lifestyles, different communities, and we see the world differently. Mm-hmm. So when you're on that deliberate body, you're trying to get a vision based on all 13 that all 13 can live with.
Mm. And that's from the school board, from the city council perspective. Right. She's worked with mayors, but that's happening by and large in the Senate, and that's also happening in Congress.
That should happen in Senate and Congress.
should happen.
I'm not saying it's happening.
It's not. Why isn't it happening, Ms. TaJuan?
Because of greed and power. Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in school and I learned about civics, and I was so excited about having a voice, particularly because understanding that my forefathers and my ancestors largely did not have a voice. And so I was so excited in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, learning about all of that. And then as I continued to get older, learning about it. And then I realized that everybody didn't want me to have a voice. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that I was a double minority, a woman and a person of color. People didn't want me to have a voice. And what was conflicting for me, Ms. TaJuan, was that I grew up understanding that it was a public service position. How do we get to greed in a public service position? I don't understand.
Because you have donors. You have people who support your campaign. And donors have agendas. Let's not forget that. I would never, ever forget someone who had a zoning issue reminding me of how much he wrote me a check for the limit of my that he could give in my campaign. And I said, I have put it to good use. And if I never get another dime from you, you can say I served you well. Sometimes it's donors. And then sometimes I will admit there are some corrupt politicians. I call them politicians because that politician is more self-serving. Public servants are not. I'd like to think I was a public servant.
Well, then I respectfully then, in that case, apologize for calling you a retired politician. I should have said retired public service, but
I
that
use
was
that's okay. That's okay. You don't know, but that's what I do. I usually call myself an elected public servant
okay.
because politicians are usually self-serving to me.
Ms. TaJuan.
It's supposed to be one serving minute. It's really supposed to be one serving minute, but usually the one's interest outweighs the minute.
Yeah,
and that's wrong.
And that's wrong. I'm gonna tell you something. If you guys have never watched the movie Miss Sloan with Jessica Chastain in it, it is amazing. It really gave me a different insight into lobbyists. Those are the donors. She's talking about people pushing for, one side or the other. It gave me a different insight, but I wanted to really establish that. And so you mentioned that you can compromise sort of on your policies, but you're not compromising your values.
No.
Okay.
You don't compromise your values and your beliefs. But for instance, I really felt that with as many children as we had dying for tennis shoes and designer clothes, we needed a dress code or a uniform. And I was adamant about it. I must admit, I was adamant about it. And then somebody said, well, we don't want children to lose their creativity of putting clothes together. That's where we get our fashion designers, our stylists. We don't want them to lose that. And that made sense to me. I said, well, how can we do that? And I said, well, we can give them a menu of uniforms. They said, it's still a uniform. Well, we can give them some free days. 1 day a week, a free day, or so they can. I said, okay, that's compromise.
That's compromise, not compromising your core foundational beliefs and values. So politics does not require that, because I know for a fact I've had several people ask me to run for different things, and I have hands down said nope, would never consider it, because I don't want to have to sell my soul to be a part of that. I don't want to compromise. I'm so glad that you explained that to me, because I knew that was a non-option for me. So tell us, Mr. One, have we lost our country? Has our country been hijacked? What can we do for those of us that are watching the news every day, that are seeing what's happening, that are disgruntled? You mentioned your involvement. The reason that you got involved was because you saw what was happening to the school district that your children were going to, and you knew you needed to stand up and be a voice.
Well, I think we have to vote. We have to make sure we not only vote, but we encourage other people to get out and vote, and make ourselves a committee of one to make that happen. I have decided. I know 8 people who I've lost either directly or indirectly because of some family member through the pandemic. And I said to myself, this is a promise I'm making to myself. I will identify 8 people who did not vote in the last election and make sure they vote this time for those 8 people. That is going to be my tribute to them. So you have to make some very personal decisions, and that's very easy to do when you go to church or when we return to church. When we go to church or our club meetings, I'm a member of a lot of organizations, and you ask questions, you meet your children's friends, and you find out their circumstances. Oh, so you didn't vote last time because you have a felon. How long ago has that been? Well, I know somebody who could help you get those rights restored. Would you like for me to make a phone call? Or I make the phone call, hook them up, give them the process, and then I call again and say, and I'm telling you this because I've done this. Did you go by and get that form you needed? Did you take it to your probation officer? What else do you need to do now? Ms. Mitchell, you gonna make sure I vote? Yes, I'm gonna make sure you vote, because this is a crucial election, and you follow up. So we're gonna have to do things like that, and then we're gonna have to make sure that our voices are heard and our votes are protected.
How do we do that? How do we make sure that our votes are protected?
Well, right now I'm just following. I'm looking at every meeting, listening to every meeting of our election commission
Okay.
to find out what's going on the new voting machines, how we're going to vote. The other day, I just heard that a lot of states will be doing mail-in voting. I thought I wanted that for us, but then I heard that, I don't want to make this too political, but then I heard that one of the president's main donors is going to be named over the post office. And, that they he does not want them to have any money, federal funds, to get out of the hole so they can continue. He really wants to privatize the post office. And I was like, oh my goodness, we have to be vigilant. Now, I don't know his motives, but I know I'm going to stay woke.
Hey, well, yeah, I think she's going to stay woke. And you see, I'm trying to continue. When they go low, we go high. I'm trying to continue. I'm trying. So, Ms. Swan, you mentioned earlier that it was very important that people get involved. And that you've been talking about that throughout the theme of this entire conversation, that we've got to get involved. Tell us, particularly for the supporters of the Total Woman Summit, why is it important that women get involved?
Because we are doers. We're caretakers and we're doers. And we have always, and if you've noticed the numbers, I'm just not saying this, the numbers prove that women, especially Black women, we vote in high numbers. Because we got to make sure those policies are right, because we got a whole family that got to make it in this America, United States of America. And so use that and take it to the NAACP, your local NAACP, go to their meetings, join groups like Women United with United Way, who always are looking for advocacy issues to kind of push from the sideline to get heard. Because what did I say? One of the stools that make things change, a public outcry.
You said public outcry.
That's right. When you get a public outcry, not an individual outcry, but when you get a public outcry on any issue, you can see some change. And that's why I said, make sure you are in something. The NAACP, advocacy at your church. My church has organized an advocacy team just to make sure everybody is registered to vote in our church. And we have campaigns on early voting, how you can vote for early vote, how you can, if you are 70 years old and you don't want to get out in the state of Tennessee, you can send in a mail-in ballot that they will send to your home. You fill it out and mail it and send it back in, and you're through voting. You don't have to stand in a line. And we make sure all of our sick and shut-in have an opportunity to vote just by faxing in their requests for them, letting the ballot come to them, and then we call that sick and shut-in member and say, did you get that ballot? Do you need a stamp? Mail it in. So get involved.
Get involved. And Mr. Juan said earlier that you can be a committee of one. Number one, that's getting reconciled within yourself, that you are going to make sure that your voice is heard and that you do matter. I can give you, for an example, what you can do as a committee of one. Number one, because I decided last year with the Total Woman Summit, after also understanding that my Sisters of Women United, because I'm also a member, that domestic violence was going to be our initiative. One decision, Total Woman Summit, not a nonprofit. Our economic impacts from that, with all the women and all the brothers that supported us, our economic impact from the Total Woman Summit for the domestic violence campaign was over $27,000. One person. I don't even do this every day. Just saying, we're going to make a difference.
I was blown away by your Women's Summit and how many women are so eager to learn and to do. Learn and do. And that group of women in itself, do you know if every woman in there can make sure they got 3 new voters? It could change a district. It could change a city. It could change the United States. I mean, that's how simple it is. And you do a good job, Sherica.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just want to help. I really do just want to help. And so I want people to know you don't have to get overwhelmed by what you're seeing on the news. You can use that to inspire you to action. And Ms. TaJuan mentioned that you have to use your voice and you can make a post. There's a difference between making a post just to comment on what's happening. What is your call to action? Right. She said that she made a post that was shared over 60 times. I know I was a part of that post, okay? And I can tell you the sanitation workers went from not having PPE to having PPE, but let me tell you the trickle-down economic effect of that. So number one, they're safer. That means that we are flattening the curve because they're not potentially being exposed to COVID-19, taking it home to their families, and then all the people that their families are touching. Number two, we use a locally owned business. Right. It was minority owned. So then we're putting money back into the economy because she used her voice and she held those folks that she voted for accountable to do their job.
And I'm not going to even say, I will say, I don't think that, I think it's something that just got over their heads and they didn't think about. But when it came to their attention, they responded.
They responded. And so she said one of the four legs of the four-legged stool, public outcry. And she's right. And I want to clean it up. These are good people. When I say do their job, there's so many things that are on people's radar. Let me tell you right now, I had a friend who's doing learning at home because of COVID-19. She is not a homeschooler. She's doing learning at home. She is an executive with one of the largest organizations, global organizations. So she's working at home. Do you know? Let me tell you how stuff can fall off your radar. She told me her baby told her, he's 8, that it was 9 o'clock, it was time for bed. And he said to her, my head hurts. And she was like, why your head hurts? He said, because you forgot to feed me today, mommy. I'm 20.
Yes, she's on her job, just trying to teach.
She's just trying to do her job, make sure he's getting his education. She called all kinds of crazy right now. She's like, we had dinner. We had cereal for dinner. But my point is, if a mommy can forget to feed her baby because COVID-19 has disrupted and interrupted the way we are normal, then some things can fall off the radar, which is why we need public outcry. And we'd love to believe that it's always going to be something fell off the radar because of the pandemic. But we all know that's not true. That's true. So, which is why you're going to have to use your voice. What advice would you give to those people who are just exhausted, Ms. TaJuan, and are like, they have just become paralyzed?
I would first advise them to pray and ask for strength and direction. And ask God for one task, just one. Don't try to do too many. And then complete that one task. It could be checking on your neighbor next door, or it could be running an errand for somebody, or making a phone call to a congressional office about one issue. Just ask God for strength to do one thing. And I think it'll energize you so you'll do more. Right now, I'm watching the mayor as he tried to comb through the CARES Act to find out how much we can use for city government out of that money. And I would hate, I know our city has probably spent a lot of money for overtime for police, fire, paramedics. And we've had a lot of people sick from police, fire, paramedics, 911 callers, operators, and 211 operators. Well, if you've had to use a lot of overtime for that, your budget is going to be short. And I would hope that Congress would find it in their hearts to find resources for these local governments. So, because if they don't, we're going to have higher property taxes, trying to offset that loss. And for us to have higher property taxes at a time when you have a 20%, 1 out of 5 Americans are not working, is just a travesty.
Mm. Thank you. We have 2 questions before we close, and I am going to ask that you guys stay with us until the end because we have some really exciting needs at the end. So here's question number 1. How do we get to the place where the CARES Act is giving money to businesses that didn't need it and not taking care of this? Let me ask the rest, and not taking care of our small businesses.
I truly believe that the rules were written to capture some of those bigger businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And Democrats and some Republicans who were trying to make sure that the smaller businesses were taken care of, felt like if they delayed a fight, nothing would get out there. So I just don't think they realized, they thought that thing through. I really don't. I think they thought that because they said it was for our small Main Street businesses, that people would adhere to that. But when people, it just goes to show you, when you're in a pandemic and people are feeling at a loss already, they don't see your loss is greater than my loss. It's just my loss. And they don't want any loss. So I thought it was I thought some of those companies were really selfish, especially the ones that took 10 and 20 million.
I thought they were. I found myself, I own a management consulting business, own a small business. And what I thought was interesting was that I found myself competing against a business like a Ruth Chris. Mm-hmm. Because the provision exception was they were able to apply per location, mm-hmm. which is why it's so important that you have relationships with your local bank. That's just the nugget. We did businesses last week, but I'm just telling you, this is why, because I found myself as a small business and they ran out of money the first time before I finally got in that bucket, because the money had been allocated to businesses that should have never been considered small business in the first place.
Well, that's the truth. And I think they wrote them loose so it could capture some of those mid-sized businesses, mm-hmm. but they didn't think it would be such a run on the money that was shut out. And then I think they've learned from experience, and that's why they came back with the second round. Mm-hmm. But it goes back to what my mama said.
Greed is the problem. We don't have a poverty problem. That's what her mama said if you joined us late. Her 91-year-old mother told her that we don't have a poverty problem in this country. We have a greed problem. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, here's our last question.
The greedy takes from the needy.
The greedy takes from the needy. I love it. That's a good way to put that. Okay, it says, I found myself unemployed shortly before the pandemic hit. I have a strong interest in working in the government sector. I have interviewed without success in obtaining a position. I know it is who you know, but can you offer any other words of advice on what else I should be doing in addition to just applying for opportunities that I feel match my qualifications?
I'm not going to say it's who you know, but I do know that often that is the case. But I would suggest that you practice with somebody that you trust your interviewing skills, mm-hmm. and see how you are aligning your talents and skills to that job that mm-hmm. you're applying for. And maybe if you know people in that area who work there, share that with them and get some coaching from them. Mm-hmm. And establish some networks. There's nothing wrong with networks. And then ask them if you can use them as references. But now I always say this, when you establish some networks, make sure people know about you. just don't call me out when they ask me, can I use your name?
Mm-mm.
But make sure that I have had some opportunity to see you from a distance and see you engaging in community service or in religious work or or on the
Community,
job.
right?
Yeah.
Somewhere. You got to be
Yeah,
serving.
let me see something, and then I can say something. Because if I don't see anything, I can't say nothing.
Then let us see something so she can say something for the people in the back, okay?
That's the truth.
I love it. But this conversation has been amazing, Ms. TaJuan. Thank you. And that person said, great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the gift of time. I appreciate you. Ms. TaJuan has, she has a place where she drops really good information. You guys, are they able to join your group on Facebook? No, I'm sorry.
Look, when I started Facebook, I was old, and my husband said, "Don't get on that Facebook." And I said, "Look, I won't have any more than 500 close friends. I promise you, I won't." And I
So,
won't tell him how many I have, but I have gone over his limit.
well, she can't, and we're going to respect her relationship, but the next time you can see her will be at our annual Total Woman Summit in September, where she will be live and in person. And so you can learn more about that on the Total Woman Summit. If you're not following me, you should be following me at Total Woman Summit and at Sherica Hymes. Shamel will drop that in our chat. Please do so, because we have such great news for you in playbacks. But as we both said, we are members of Women United, and because we are committed continuously to making sure that we are taking care of those that are in our community, we have a campaign right now that will allow us, with your gifts, to, if you give us $20 or give them $20, we can get 20 masks. So if you will please join us in this 20 for 20 campaign, we are supporting those frontline workers at the Salvation Army. So for $20, they get 20 masks, and it helps keep them safe and their families safe as they serve the needs of our community, as they're feeding our children that are out of school, as they're serving at the domestic violence shelters, as they are doing the things that are necessary to serve in our community. You can do it two ways. You can text COVID relief to 91999. You can screenshot this, or you can go to healthgearnow.com. It's the first thing you'll see when you go on the website. The beautiful thing is it is totally tax deductible. And so what I need you to do is I need you to do that as soon as we get off this call. I need you to do the 20 for 20. And if you are very fortunate, you don't have to just do 20. You can do 100 for 100. We need it. We need you to stand with us, and we need you to share it with a friend. And we'll go ahead and say thank you in advance. So thank you all so much for joining us today for this segment. Ms. TaJuan, thank you for your gift of time. Thank you for your gift of wisdom. And thank you just for the gift that is you. You have been amazing. I have learned a lot. I feel more informed and more inspired. So Thank you. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, and we'll see you back tonight at 7 as we talk with Senator Katrina Robinson and continue this conversation about the politics of the pandemic. Yep, 7 o'clock. You still got time to register. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.